Let's see. Okay. We're going to do an exam 3 review. So let's see. I put a few things together and let's actually go over a few of the details of what's going on with the exam 3. So I've sent out an email today and I just want to reiterate it in this video. The test window now is a 24-hour window rather than a 3-hour window. It extends from this Friday, November 13th, 3 p.m. to next Saturday, to a day later, Saturday at 3 p.m. The test is still 3 minutes. It's over chapters 9, 10, and 11. It still requires Proctorio, and included in the email is sort of the normal exam instructions, including which learning objectives and whatnot that we're going to go over. So as several of you have asked, and I think it's actually a good idea, I'm going to try and take questions, example questions from the exam, and work through some of them. So I have a bunch here, and some of them are knowledge questions, or some of them are smaller calculation problems. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work through kind of the bigger calculation ones, but all of them I'm going to post these documents, a blank one and one with everything worked out, or at least all the questions answered. So I'm not going to go over every one of these questions. I'm going to go over the big calculation questions, but the documents that I'm going to post on Blackboard after this video are going to have one blank one and one with everything worked out. So let's kind of take a look. I think they're pretty much in chapter order, but they may not be. But let's just take a look and see what we got going here. I just looking at it. I understand that they may not be super clear because it just when I copy and paste the questions over, the wording is small. So you may actually want to print these out, or at least get the file and start looking at the file while going through this. So you'll have access to these actual questions and whatnot. So, like I say, I'm not going to go through some of the knowledge ones and explain them. You can pick those up and find answers in the PowerPoint. But let's look at the actual question, calculation question. So here, question 2, it says they've got units to be produced. They have some information here. Oh, let's see, I don't have my pen up. Okay, yep, there we go. So it says they sell things for $8, 4 ounces of metal, and so what is the total cost of direct materials? So this is going to be one of those. I think it's going to be a kind of a. Oh, look at that! It's a little thicker. Beginning inventory plus purchases or incoming equals. You know what? I think that's almost too thick there, isn't it? Well, let's go with that for right now. Equals ending inventory. Typically we say cost of goods sold, but I'll just say things that leave the inventory outgoing. So here, what do we think? What is the total cost? So what are going to be the purchases, right? So let's see. We need to figure out beginning inventory, ending inventory, and what left. So the beginning inventory is, what is the total cost of direct materials? They prefer to have 10% of materials required for the following months. So the beginning inventory for October, well, so if we had some fictitious September here, September's ending inventory, right? The ending inventory is 10% of the next month. So September's ending inventory would be 10% of 4,900, right? And that would be how many units? So that'd be 490 units. But what we're looking at is the raw materials, right? So each of these units take 4 ounces of metal. So this would be times 4. So our beginning inventory would be 1960. Then our ending inventory, well, it's going to be this number right here. It's going to be November, which is 10% times November, 50/50. So that's going to be 505 times 4. So that's going to be our ending inventory. So that comes out to 2020. And then we're going to look at production, right? So the production here for October, in other words, what's going to leave inventory? Well, what's going to leave inventory is going to be the items we produce. That's going to be the 4,900 just times 4 units. So that comes out to 1836, 1619, 600. Okay, so we would to get the purchases here, we would take these two, add these two together, and then subtract this. So we would take these two and then subtract 1960, because in other words, bring in the beginning inventory. And that comes out to 21. So it'd come down to 19,660. So that'd be the amount of ounces. And what are they asking for? Oh, the total cost. So we would take this, and the total cost is 0.7 per ounce. So we'd multiply that by 0.7. And so that's going to come out to, I see now, that comes out to this answer here, 13,762. So we do all this. We have to convert the units to the raw material, which is the 4 ounces per unit. And then once we figure out the beginning inventory, ending inventory, and whatnot, we have to then, to figure out what's the total amount that we're going to purchase, we have to then multiply that by 0.7, which is the cost per ounce. So again, the basics are pretty easy. Just the beginning inventory. This equation is kind of the basic equation that we've gone over several times, and it's making sure that you understand how to plug in all the other numbers. Okay. So next question here. We have something very similar. Okay, this is the master budget. This is the sales revenue. I think the other one was units to be produced. So this is sales revenue. They sell whistles for $5 each. They have a desired ending inventory of production of 5%. So again, we're going to be doing another one of these beginning inventory plus purchases. Or I think that in this case, we're going to be doing production. In other words, this is the end, whatever comes into inventory, and then we have ending inventory, then plus whatever goes out of inventory. Okay, so we can convert all of these numbers to production items just by dividing by $5, right? So if we divide those things by $5, we'd be able to start working in production units. Because I think that's, yeah, how many units. We're given the sales revenue, and we're given $5 per unit, so we can convert all these numbers into units by just dividing by 5. So the beginning inventory, they have a desired ending inventory of production of 5% of next month's budgeted sales. So in what month are we looking for? We're looking for November. So November's beginning inventory is October's ending inventory. So what is October's ending inventory? Well, October's ending inventory is going to be 5% of the next month. So beginning inventory is going to be 60,000 divided by 5, right? So that's 12,000. And then multiply by 0.05. Okay. And that comes to 600. So 600 is our beginning inventory, right? How did I get that? The beginning inventory of November is the ending inventory of October. October's ending inventory is 5% of the next month's sales. So 5% of the next month's in units. 5% of next month is 5% of the November units. We get the November units by taking the dollars, 60,000 divided by $5 per unit. That gives us the November units. And then the ending inventory of October is 5% of that. That is times 0.05. So that's the ending inventory for October, which then becomes the beginning inventory for November. Okay, production in. Well, the production that's coming in is that 60, what are we looking at? I mean, we need to produce. Ending inventory is going to be 51,000. So the ending inventory number is going to be November's ending inventory is going to be the next month. 51,000 is going to be December volume divided by 5. And that's going to be, and then multiply that by 0.05. And so this gives you the units. So that's going to be 10,200, I guess. Multiply it by 0.05. It's going to be 550, 510. Okay, so our ending inventory is 510. And then how much do we sell in November? So the amount that we sell is going to be the outgoing. So that's just going to be a straight 60,000 divided by 5. So that's going to be 12,000. So we're going to sell out of the inventory 12,000. So you can see beginning inventory is 600. We need to know this number, and ending inventory is going to be 510, and we're going to sell 12,000. So you end up having the amount of production is 510 plus 12,000, and then we have to drag the 600 over, minus 600. And that gives you 11 something. 11.9. Oh, well, it's going to be this one. 11.9. So another beginning inventory, another inventory equation problem. Just make sure you understand which numbers come from where. Where the beginning inventory, where the ending inventory, and what the in and out number is. Like I say, these documents will be posted for you to kind of take a look at. Okay, this is actually a question I had the other day. Just make sure you understand what they're asking for. Here we've got that requires the ending cash balance. So I guess I should circle this one. But they're asking what's the ending cash balance. So you have, these are pluses, right? You have plus, you have cash on hand, and you've got cash you collect. These are minuses, all the disbursements. These are minuses that leave. So when you add it all up, this comes out to minus 11,000. In other words, they have more bills than they have cash. Well, it says they require an ending balance of 5,000, right? So if we look at this on kind of a line where we say this is 0, and we want to have 5,000, and we're actually at, and I'll just use this as it, we're actually at minus 11,000. How much do we have to borrow to get from here to here? Well, we have to borrow 16,000, right? We have to borrow 11,000 to get to 0, and then borrow another 5,000. So if the question was how much do they need to borrow, this is how much they need to borrow. But what is the question actually asking? After they've borrowed the 16,000, what's the ending cash balance? Well, we borrowed 16,000 so we could get to positive 5. So that's why the question here is 5. So just make sure you understand which question they're asking. I think they could ask either one. How much you need to borrow, or what would the ending cash balance be? Okay, let me. Okay, so this is a staggered question. So credit collections are 10% in the month of sale, 65% a month in the following, and 20% 2 months following. The remaining 5% in what is the total cash collections in June? Okay, so cash we're looking at June here, right? So we're looking at June. So cash definitely is, we're going to add cash because we're going to get all of that. And then we have this credit sales, but the credit sales are not all collected here. So let me actually put a couple of things up here. If I said April, and if I said May, and if I said June. So it's 10% in the month of sale, 65% in the following month, and 20% in 2 months following sale. So of this 51,000, how much gets collected in June? Of the June credit sales, how much gets collected in June? Well, it's 10%, right? If you wanted to, just so you can understand July and August, although that it's not there. So for the June credit sales, 10% is collected in June, 65% is collected in July, and 20% is collected in August. But we can say that also about the following months, right? So for the May credit sales, 10% is collected in May, 65% is collected in June, and 20% is collected in July. And if I go back, so this is from this number here. If I go back to April's, 10% of the credit sales in April are collected in April, 65% is collected in May, and 20% is collected in June. So what we're concerned with is just this collection, right? So it's going to be all of the cash collected in June, plus it's going to be these percentages of the various month. So it's going to be 54,000 plus 10% times 51,000, right? Because that's June. That's June credit. And then in June, we're going to collect part of May's credit. Well, what part of May's credit? Well, it's going to be 65% of the 35,000. And then we're going to collect some of April's credit. And that's going to be 20% of 10,000. So it's going to be all of the cash. So it's going to be June cash, which is 54,000, plus these calculations: 10% of June credit, 65% of May credit, and 20% of April credit. And that's how you get it. And that's why I kind of set it out here in this little chart, so you can see how the stagger works. So you figure those all out, and I'm just going to take a look because I've already calculated it. It's this number here, 83. Okay. I think this one was kind of a strange one. Question 8. Yeah, it was kind of a strange one. Okay, so we've got these this information. Here's the sales budget, how much they plan on, dollar-wise, how much they plan on selling each month. The expected gross profit is 20%. The ending inventory for February is 5,000. Believe it or not, I don't even think we use this. Desired inventory levels at the end of the month are 20% of next month, and here's the kicker. Next month's cost of goods sold. Well, how do we figure out cost of goods sold? Well, we know that the sales price is made up of two things, right? We know it's made up of COGS and the gross profit. Well, we say they've already told us 20% is gross profit, so that must mean 80% of the sales price is the COGS. So if they're saying the inventory level at the end of the month is going to be 20% of next month's cost of goods sold. Okay, and what month are we looking at? What is the desired ending inventory of May? So the desired ending inventory of May is going to be 20% times, well, what's the next month? June's COGS. You know what? I'm actually kind of liking this thicker one. So what is June's COGS? Well, June's sales is 18,000. And the COGS portion is, well, we need to multiply that, well, here, by 80%. So if you multiply 18,000 by 80% and then multiply that by 20%, you're going to get, so this ends up being 80%. That's supposed to be a 20. This is 14,400, and then multiplied by is going to be 2880, which is, well, thankfully it's one of the things given. So just the extra little thing is making sure that you notice that they say cost of goods sold and you figure out how to get to the cost of goods sold. So not deeply math oriented, it just, once again, making sure you're picking the right numbers. Okay, this next one is they have the following budget. Purchases are, okay, so this is another one of those stagger things, right? So actually, maybe what I'll do is do the same thing. I'll kind of erase some of this. So what are the total cash disbursements in October? Okay, so like I said, just similar to this one up here, we're going to have things happen in different months. So we've got purchases are paid as follow: 45 in the month of purchase, 40% the following month, and 2 months after. And we want to know total cash disbursements. Okay, so we're really just focused on August, September, and October. So if I say August, September, October. So of this 48,800, how much do we actually pay in October? Well, we're going to pay 45%. Of September, how much do we pay in September? Well, we pay 45% of it in September, and we pay 40% of it in October, and, well, just to complete it, 15% in November, etc. For August, we pay 45% of this in August. We pay, what is it, 40% of that 38,000 in September, and we pay 15% in October. So what I'm doing is even though we have purchases from prior months, we're paying them at different times. And so what we're trying to find out is how much cash is getting paid out in October. Well, so this is 45%. It's 45% of 48,800 plus 40% of 45,400 plus 15% of the 38,800. And that comes up to this number here, 45,940. So once again, just understanding how the stagger works and understanding which percentage you need to apply to which number is kind of the key there. Okay, moving on. So I think this page was a lot of knowledge questions. I'll just kind of point out here, like question 13. It says it's asking you to know what the ROI is. Down here, it's asking you to know what the sales margin is. Just make sure you know those equations. So ROI is the operating income over the assets. And sales margin is operating income over sales. And if you remember the last one, sales over assets, well, I'll let you figure that out. Make sure you know all three of those. Okay, so but once you know, basically this is sales margin. Once you know the three equations, then these questions are kind of just straightforward. It's just plugging them in. Okay. So question 16, again, it's not actually a very difficult question, but it's kind of it's a knowledge question posed as a kind of numbers. So you see they throw you all these numbers here, right? And they give you a bunch of stuff. And what the question is, what is the volume variance for personal expenses? So the two things we need to know here is, what is a volume variance? So remember in chapter 11, we look at price and quantity variance, right? This is neither of those. If you remember in chapter 10, we looked at the master budget and we looked at actual results, and then we said we need to create a flexible budget. Because remember I said if you sold, if you made the master budget as 100 dollars or items or whatever, and actual is at 200. Well, you can't compare the costs of the master budget to the actual cost because it's comparing apples and oranges. So what you want to do is you want to shift up the volume of the master budget to 200. So you recreate the budget at 200 and then you compare it to the actual results. So this flexible budget, the difference between these two is called the volume variance. And what are you doing? You're increasing the volume from the master budget level to the actual results. So that's the first part, that the volume variance is increasing the volume. The second part is we need to look at personal expenses here. What is personal expenses? It is fixed. And what is the definition of fixed? A fixed cost. Remember, a fixed cost is one that does not change due to volume, right? So even though we move from 100 to 200, that's like saying, do we change the rent of the building because we sold more or less? No, we don't. And that's what we're saying here. So if you notice, this fixed portion is 90,000. So based on the given information, what is the volume variance of personal expenses? Well, the volume variance is where we change from the master to the flexible budget by increasing volume. However, fixed costs do not change with the change in volume. So what would I say here? I would say that the volume variance is going to be 0 because this, by the very nature that it's fixed, doesn't change. So that's why I kind of say this is a knowledge question kind of hidden behind a bunch of numbers. Okay, so there's a couple of things here, but they're fairly simple, and I have worked, not me, actually, the other professor has worked out a lot of these, but I've gone through and double-checked them at least. So you can have the, I'll post these files with all these things. Let's keep going down to, let me just see what we're doing time-wise. Okay. I wanted to try and keep this around 30 minutes. We're probably going to go a little over, though, because we're getting close to the end, but I still probably have about 10 minutes worth of things. Okay. So here, this is going to be one of these price and quantity variance. So this is the quantity variance. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we understand what's the quantity variance. Now remember, you can always kind of start off by knowing the quantity variance is going to be, well, the change in quantity. So it's going to be the actual quantity minus the standard quantity. And it just so happens, this is the part that you kind of have to know, is that this one requires the standard price. For the price variance is going to be the change in price, so the actual price minus the standard price, except we multiply this by actual quantity. And if you remember that middle item there, we had the actual quantity, actual price, yada, yada, yada. That the middle one was actual quantity times standard price. So that's why we're using these here. So the middle bit should be easy to remember because it's always the actual minus the standard. So if it's quantity variance, it's the actual quantity minus the standard quantity. If it's the price variance, it's the actual price minus the standard price. The only thing that you need to know is, well, the thing outside is the other thing. So if the thing inside is quantity, the thing outside is price, and it's standard price. If the thing inside is price, then the thing outside is quantity, and it's actual quantity. That's the main one you have to kind of remember. And if you remember, how I do it is I actually map out, actual quantity, actual price, standard quantity, standard price. And remember, quantities are totals. What's the total quantity? And price is the units, right? We remember that. So if I go through here and I map out all these things and take a look. So let's take a look here. Question 21. Kind of going through and taking a look. So we produce railroad cars, so that's the product, but the direct material is tons of steel. So tons. So the actual quantity of tons of steel that we bought was 6,850. So this is the actual quantity, 6,850. Now, the standard quantity is something we're going to have to figure out. The standard cost of a ton of steel is 14. So that's the standard price, right? So we're going to need, we don't actually need to know the actual price for this particular thing because we are figuring out this, the quantity variance. So we need to know, so we've got standard price and we've got actual quantity. So we need to know standard quantity. So the thing I always remind people about standard quantity, this is the flexible budget part. In other words, if we budgeted the actual quantity, what is the actual quantity? The actual quantity of the production unit, right? If we built 1,500 cars, so the example here is if we budgeted 1,500 cars and we use 4 tons for each car, this would be our budget, which is 6,000. So our little equation here would be standard price, which would be 14 times actual quantity, 6,850 minus 6,000. And so it's going to be 14. The actual quantity is more than the budgeted quantity, which is the standard. So this is going to be, it's going to be unfavorable. It's going to be unfavorable to the tune of, and I figured out before, 11,900. Unfavorable. So what I was saying about the standard quantity, remember you take the amount of actual things you're building, which is the railroad cars, times your budget, then your standard amount of tons of steel per car, which is railroad cars 4. So if we had built 1,500, if we had planned to build 1,500, we would have budgeted 6,000. We actually used 6,850. Okay, so similarly down here, we'll do the same thing. We'll map out our actual price, actual quantity, standard price, standard quantity. And what do we need? Well, we don't need all of those. We don't need this. This is going to be actual. We need 3 of them, right? So we need actual price, standard price, and the actual quantity. So let's take a look. What do we got? I'm just kind of referring to my notes here to make sure I got. So we're given a standard price, right? The standard price for a ton of steel, what we're budgeting is going to be $12. Actual price. Well, we don't have an actual price. We're going to have to figure out an actual price from this. But we do have actual quantity, do we not? The actual quantity, the number of tons of steel, so we have 6,600 for the actual quantity of steel. And if I wanted to figure out how much did I pay for each ton of steel, it would be 110,000 divided by 6,600. And that would come out to, I'm just checking here, it looks like it's, let me double check, it looks like it's 16. So it's a repeating number, which is strange. That's why I just wanted to double check. 1667. So when we add them all together, we have the actual quantity, which is 6,600 times the actual price, $16.67, minus our budgeted price, the standard price. So you notice that the actual price and the standard price, well, the actual price is more. Again, this is going to be unfavorable, right? We're spending more than we had budgeted, and it's going to be the tune of, this one ends up being 30,800 of unfavorable. Okay, and so as I had mentioned before, I said make sure you know the sales margin and the ROI, and the third one you need to know is capital turnover. Right, and so the capital turnover was sales over assets. So one is operating income over assets, one is sales over assets, and the other one is operating income over sales. So it's just the 3 same numbers done in three different ways. Okay, I think, oh no, let's see, we got one more, maybe 1 or 2 more. and then we'll call it. Let's see. You know what? This one is a similar. This is a manufacturing overhead rate variance. So this is going to be similar to the ones I've done before. So I'll let you kind of look at the calculation in the document to figure that out. And this last one I think is going to be a fixed one. So this one's a fixed one and this one's a variable. Take a look at the last video that I just did, and those also tell you how to kind of figure these out. So I won't go into these. The rest of these, the answers are given in the documents, so I'll let you take a look at those. But at least we've kind of covered some of the. These are all things we've learned how to do. It's just when they're presented in an exam question, it has to be presented as a multiple choice item, and therefore the presentation is a little different than the homework. So hopefully this is useful. If you have any questions, happy to work through any of these. As you start working on the quizzes and get through the quizzes, if you have questions, let me know. Okay, thank you, good luck, and like I say, if you have any questions, let me know.